Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the weekend wrap with your host, Base the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It is appreciated. As you know, this is the one show a week where there is no production, just my thoughts. And with that, I was taking a bit of a break this week just due to trying to sort out some other things which didn't quite go to plan, but it's fine. We deal with that at a later date. And I thought, okay, well, let me sort of take my time because there's not really going to be a huge amount of things going on this week. Well, I was wrong on that. You know, I get something spectacularly wrong, and this was one of those moments. 2024 decided to deliver in a major fashion already. So what I will do is I'm going to go over the card that took place last night very briefly, although there was some very significant talking points to take place. But yeah, I mean, look, it was Virgil Ortiz versus Frederick Lawson. First fight back in about 17 months. So really good to see him back in the ring. I guess we'll start there. First bits of news, I suppose, is you had Arnold Barboza Jr. and Jose Ramirez both signing with Golden Boy Promotions. So both of our obviously Mexican descent, and now have moved from Top Rank over to Golden Boy. So Golden Boy are definitely thickening up their 140-pound division stable. But then Barboza had it was a very functional performance against Ngannou, who he was fighting. I actually enjoyed the fight, to be fair. It was fun. It was I think Ngannou got retired at the end of the 8th round by the corner. Yeah, overall it was a very workmanlike performance from Barboza. I'll probably talk about that a bit more on the breakdown this Tuesday on the Undefeated podcast channel. Make sure you tune in. But the big talking points, I suppose, was what happened in the chief support and the main event. So let's get to that. You had Ohara Davies versus Ismael Barroso for the interim WBA 140-pound championship. Now, this was Ohara Davies' shot at the big time, and it was a shot he missed quite spectacularly, unfortunately. Now, funny, again, I'll go into this more on the breakdown on Tuesday, but the fight ended in about 90 seconds of the first round. Ohara Davies got caught by a counter left hook by Ismael Barroso. This happened because he basically lunged in. Not only did he sort of lunge in with his backhand being out of range, trying to walk Ismael Barroso down, but he was very square on when he lunged, and his entire stance from the time the fight started up until when the fight ended, he was very square on. He was sort of plodding forward. He wasn't in a bladed stance to protect himself against the southpaw. Now, shout outs to Danny from Fight Fan TV, because he did obviously make this in our group, which I didn't even really think about, to be honest. And the fact that every fight that Ohara Davies has lost has been to southpaws, because this is the third loss of his career. First one was the Josh Taylor, where he quit due to the broken nose or whatever it was. Then he was outpointed by Jack Catterall, and now knocked out quite spectacularly by Ismael Barroso. Lunging in, getting caught with that with the counter left hook, it took his legs away, and he obviously made the very cardinal sin of trying to get up way too quickly after the knockdown, so he didn't properly have his legs under him. He probably needed to take about another 4 or 5 seconds before he decided to get up for the first time. Got knocked down again, and the second time the ref says, "Are you okay? Are you okay to go?" He said, "I'm fine," but he was looking in a totally different direction to where the ref was at the time. Ref waved it off. He started to complain and say, "No, I'm okay, I'm fine." But to be honest, like, the writing was on the wall at that point, because he was foggy-eyed. He wasn't lucid. He didn't really know where he was at the time. And I guess that is what happens when obviously you have that sort of, I guess, poor time management, poor ring management, like not really knowing how to navigate those troubled waters. It's a bit of a shame. And I mean, look, I made a joke on, well, to be honest, I say it's a joke, but it could very well turn out to be true. I put on Twitter, like, you know, all that Spanish that O'Hara's been learning might come in handy, because Golden Boy is going to have him fighting on your Costa Valle undercards in Costa Rica moving forward. And I would not be surprised if that's the case. It's either that or his contract's about to be terminated with the swiftest of swiftness, purely because he was there specifically for the tee up to get that belt, so it could be parlayed into either a Rolly fight or a Ryan Garcia fight. I can't see them having any other future plans for O'Hara Davies at this point. So yeah, it was a shocker. I didn't obviously do any picks and predictions last week, but I would have thought that he could win that fight. Although as soon as I saw him walk out at the start of that first round, I said, I can see him getting knocked out here, because the stance, everything, the way he was plodding, none of it looked. It didn't look fluid. Whereas Barroso, for as old as he may be, was looking very comfortable in there. Andy was boxing on the back foot, so he wasn't even being the aggressor. He was specifically moving backwards. You could tell when someone like him is boxing on the back foot, it's to set you up for something. And O'Hara Davies got caught with that left hand earlier on in the round and didn't adjust to it. So yeah, sucks for him. We'll see what happens moving forward, but I don't see it being any great shakes. I can definitely see this probably being the end of his American dream, but we'll see. Then moving on to the main event, you had yet another 1 round blowout. Now this, I was actually looking at the odds for what a fight would be like in terms of whether or not this would go sort of 1 to 2 rounds. I was saying that if you bet 1 to 2 rounds in the prediction, I think it was like 12 to 5 or something like that, which was very, very good odds, to be totally honest, because I thought, well, I can't see this fight going more than 2 rounds unless he really is just looking for activity. The maximum I would have said was 3, but this fight was going to go more than a round. Look, we had a situation where from a counter jab, Frederick Lawson basically walked onto a counter jab, which sort of, you know, wobbled him a bit, staggered his equilibrium. But then you got Virgil Ortiz throwing behind he's throwing a flurry of shots afterwards, but nothing up top is landing, and maybe 2 body shots have landed. But even in between that, you've got Frederick Lawson has actually fired back. He's just tucking up, trying to sort of take some of the shots. He might have been a little bit hurt, but he wasn't, he wasn't out on his feet taking clean punches left, right and centre. Everything was being caught on the gloves. And we're talking about the first 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes of the first round. Inexplicably, you've got Tony Super Weeks jumps in and stops the fight. And his reasoning for stopping the fight, which he told one of the presenters afterwards, and when he was doing the in-ring post-fight analysis, says that he saw Frederick Lawson's eyes roll in the back of his head. Well, I need to know how he saw that, because Frederick Lawson's guard was like this, with his gloves pretty much covering his face for the majority of the time. Nothing lands on his head. So if his guard is like that, and his gloves are pretty much underneath his eyebrows, how are you able to see from where you were that his eyes rolled back in the back of his head? It was a laughable excuse. It was poor quality of the highest standard, and it might be one of the worst stoppages I've seen. I mean, to be honest, I thought the Barroso stoppage and the knockdown that was called for the fight that he had with Rolly last year was bad. No, I think this one is worse. I can't remember many stoppages worse than this one. I mean, look, I've gotten to Howard Foster on numerous occasions about some of the poor stoppages that he's had in fights, and yeah, I'm sure there's others, but like Tony Weeks, 2 of his most high profile fights to like of recent memory, and both of them he's ended in very, very controversial fashion. It's time for him to get that P45. Now look, he has been in the past a very, very good referee. Obviously the Castillo Corrales fight, he refereed that, and it's funny, he let that one go on when maybe some other referees would have stopped it, and it ended up making one of the biggest and most dramatic comebacks in boxing history. One of the, you know, sort of, it's labeled as one of the greatest fights ever because of what happened in it, the ebbs and the flows. But you've got that, and then you go from letting a fight carry on maybe longer than it should have to not even allowing a fight to develop in the first place. Now look, whether people are going to say the writing was on the wall, that Lawson was going to get knocked out eventually, yeah, okay, eventually, but at least give him a chance to do something. Like first round, it was honestly, it's awful. And now that he's got repeat behaviors and repeat patterns for this, like you can't have any credibility if you've got him on your cards. It's about time. I mean, Kenny Bayless had to, you know, he had to retire eventually. Tony Weeks is going to have to. Obviously, Mills Lane, one of the greatest ever. He knew when it was time to call it quits. It's time for Tony Weeks to call it quits. I'm not going to be here and trash his name and call him every other, you know, superlative and disrespectful, you know, acronym under the sun. But ultimately, it's time to go. Simple as that. But with that, Virgil Ortiz said that he is now looking... you know, obviously he was about to do a heel turn in the ring because he thought they were saying Ortiz sucks in the ring, but they was actually talking about Tony Weeks, but he didn't hear it properly. So the presenter cleared that up really quick, but that heel turn was about to be magic. So it's actually a great thing that he it's probably a shame that the presenter actually corrected him, because I looked like he was about to go into full heel mode. Oh, y'all don't love me now, okay, fine, I'm gonna do this for me, kind of thing. And it would have been a great moment. But that being said, he called out very respectfully, but he called out Tim Tszyu after, said he would love to get that WBO shot next, and I reckon he probably needs one or two more fights this year before being ready for that. Bearing in mind he hasn't been in the ring for 17 months prior to then, and it was a one round which he didn't even really get going, so he needs to be active again. If they need to get him back out maybe March or April time, and then you can have that fight in the summer, or if not the summer, you can have it sort of towards the end of the year. But he needs one or two more fights just to sort of fully get the rest of that ring rust off of him. But yeah, that would be a great fight. And Tim Tszyu versus Virgil Ortiz, I definitely will watch that. I'd actually, if I had to, I'd pay pay-per-view for it. And if I was in the position to go, best believe I would actually, if it was in Australia, I'd go to Australia to watch it. But more than likely, I know Tszyu wants to fight in America. So it will likely be in the west coast of America somewhere. So I would definitely try and see if I could fly over for that, because that's just got violence and brutality written all over it, and it would be a great sight to behold. But yeah, that was the end of that card pretty much. If we go back through sort of the week, some of the talking points, I guess Ryan Garcia has now decided that he no longer wants to fight Devin Haney next, and he actually now just wants to fight Rolly Romero. So him, Devin Haney and Richardson Hitchens will go in on sort of going at it on X, Twitter, on I think it was Thursday, Friday. And yeah, look, ultimately I didn't have any real expectations that fight would happen next. When both sides started talking about it positively, and then you had sort of Bill Haney on the Boxing Voice talking about it, I thought, oh, okay, well, there looks like there's more of a chance of it happening. But I never thought it would be the next fight. I always thought it would probably be maybe the fight after that, if it was going to happen at all. But I mean, officially, even though there might just be a quote-unquote delay, that's probably, I think that's now the fourth time that Ryan Garcia has actually quote-unquote ducked a Devin Haney fight. And the first two happened at 135. No, I think the first three, sorry. And then obviously this is the fourth one. So yeah, that's not necessarily looking great on his part, but he's been training with Floyd Mayweather. not as a trainer as such, but he said Floyd is like a mentor to him now. I don't know why Floyd would see Ryan as that mentor, protege, unless it's just about his exposure and his reach and being able to sort of connect with a newer, younger audience who maybe don't know who Floyd Mayweather is. I'd have to assume it's got to be something to do with that, because it can't be about their principles and values, because Ryan has been, has been pretty well documented that he doesn't hold the same type of core values and work ethic that Floyd did at that age and that Floyd even does now. So I have to assume it's got to be something. It's either got to be something to do with his marketability and being close to the person that is marketable, or it's got to be something to do with trying to get back at the Haneys, or Bill Haney, Devin Haney, or whatever that may be. I don't know the whole story, so I'm not really going to speculate on that. But that's a whole situation right there. Outside of that, I guess this is the biggest news, but there's a more significant stance which we'll talk about in a moment. But I guess the biggest news of the week was that Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou have agreed a deal to a fight on, I think it's supposed to be Friday the 8th of March in Riyadh, a 10-rounder. So it's not an exhibition. It will be, I guess, a proper boxing match similar to what the Tyson Fury one was, but it would still be classed, I guess, more as an exhibition event, just because, Francis Ngannou is a 0-1 pro at this point in time. And he sort of just has special dispensation to have these fights, just due to his background in mixed martial arts. Now, when the Fury fight happened, I always said my issue was never the fact that Fury is fighting Ngannou. My issue was the fact that Fury was the WBC champion who'd been out of the ring for 10 months. And then the first fight you have back is against an MMA fighter who's making his professional debut when your title's not on the line. Therefore, the other contenders within the division are just being basically made to wait, and you're just holding things up while you go and have this exhibition fight. I always said if he was active, if he had actually fought, say, in April, or maybe fought March and then fought in July and then was going to fight in October against Ngannou, I wouldn't have had an issue, because at least then, you're still keeping things ticking over. But to be out of the ring for almost a year and then have the Ngannou fight and keep your belt ultimately out of circulation for now what will be 14 months, when by the time the Usyk fight comes around, that was what I had the issue with. So in terms of this, Joshua fighting Ngannou, well, now that Ngannou, I guess, has quote unquote proven himself as a capable boxer, I don't have an issue, or as much of an issue. I would rather Joshua fought someone else. I would rather he actually fought, a proper full-time professional boxer. And I didn't actually think he would take this fight, because he had said previously that, well, look, I mean, yeah, from a money standpoint, it's a good money spinner, but where does it get me? Like, what does it get me ultimately? And he kept saying that, it doesn't really lead me towards my path any further. So after he said that, my own thoughts was then, okay, well then he's not going to take that, or if he does take it, it's going to be purely as a quick tick over before something else. Now, I actually thought that the Hrgovic fight would happen for an interim version of the title, and then as soon as the belt gets dropped by Fury or Usyk, once that fight takes place, then whoever wins the Hrgovic fight would just be elevated to champ. Now, some people say, well, yeah, but wouldn't that just make them, I guess, a paper champ? I goes, well, no, because ultimately that belt was about to go vacant and they were going to be the two that would fight for it anyway. So all that's happened is you're just stopping the delay between the fight happening, and ultimately the belt is still going to go to whoever that is, unless the other person doesn't take the rematch and then they have the mandatory. But I guess with all of that stuff taking place, they probably thought, rather than wait and have potentials and hypotheticals, let's do this, and then once that belt has actually become vacant, then we can look at it. So obviously Eddie Hearn said that there would be Francis Ngannou, Filip Hrgovic and Zhang Zhilei as the opponents potentially, but it ended up being Francis Ngannou, which I guess is the money play. And if you're going to have 4 fights in the space of 12 months, 11 and a half, 12 months, I mean, it's not a it's not a terrible thing to keep active with. He's had, he's been a good level of activity, and long may it continue. And as I said this on Twitter X before as well. If you're fighting regularly, like 3, 4, 5 times a year, no one can really complain if you decide to have one gimme fight or one money fight for yourself, because you're still active and you're still working. It's when you only fight once a year or twice, and then you're having like 2 gimme fights or whatever, that's when people start to criticize. So me personally, I haven't really got a big issue with it. I would have liked it to be someone else, but I get the play, and it will be interesting. And it's also, obviously, the built-in narrative is about Tyson Fury. AJ just dispatched quite comfortably someone that Tyson Fury maybe never went life and death with, but had a very hard night's work with, and potentially could have lost that fight on cuts. AJ dispatched of him comfortably. You had, the Klitschko situation where, even though Fury, I always said, actually had the better win, because I guess he had the quote unquote, the younger Klitschko that didn't take any damage in that fight as such. But AJ had the more emphatic win. He had the more defining win, obviously by stopping Klitschko. So you've got 2 stoppages there. Obviously, you got the Dillian Whyte situation where Fury managed to beat Dillian Whyte 1 round earlier than Anthony Joshua did. There were still some potential controversies and stuff there, but he got that job done quicker. But AJ obviously dealt with a much younger and fresher, and I guess more resilient Dillian Whyte than the version that Tyson Fury had. So you've got swings and roundabouts in both ways, but then this is just another common opponent between the two. And if AJ can do a much better job than Tyson Fury does, then that again builds the narrative between them two, and maybe also exposes certain truths that maybe some people don't want to see. But that's all for speculation for later on in the year. So I guess we just have to wait and see basically what happens with that. But yeah, I'm not mad at that at this point. We also had, I guess the biggest and I guess the most significant talking points of this week is about the USA boxing and their stance on trans women being allowed to compete in the professionals against women, and essentially it being about a 4-year period of what their testosterone levels are like, and they have to have a certain limit of testosterone within 12 months, I think it is, of fighting, and all their stuff. They have to do it at the cost of themselves, blah blah blah. Look, I don't even really care what their reasons, justifications, and their rationales and their thresholds were. It's wrong. I don't care who likes or dislikes that take. If you don't want to watch or listen to me because of this stance, fine, no worries. I have no cares about that at all. Biological males should not be getting in the ring with biological females in any competitive fashion. When it comes to combat sports, it's ridiculous. I've always said if trans people, men and women, want to fight, then you can fight other trans people. That's fine. If you were genetically born a male, okay, if you want to compete, then as far as I'm concerned, you should be competing against the men, whether you're taking testosterone replacements or hormone blockers or whatever. That's your business. It's either you fight the biological sort of the biological designation that you were born, or you fight against other trans people. And the irony would be half of them probably wouldn't be allowed to compete anyway, because I mean, if you're a woman that's transitioned into a man, for instance, you're going to have all kinds of hormone therapies and testosterone pills and stuff that you have to take, which probably will mean that you will fail a PED test to begin with. So that's pretty much a non-starter. But then the other way around, whether or not you might fail performance enhancements or whatever, like, no, you should still have to fight. You either fight men or you fight other trans people. That's my take on it. I'm not really going to go any further on that and that situation. I'm trying to think, is there any other major talking points that took place this week? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure there were bits and pieces here and there, but that's what's on my mind at the moment. That's kind of where my head's at. And oh, actually, yeah, the last piece, I guess, back to sort of AJ and Ngannou. So you've got potentially so Jean Gelé and Deontay Wilder have both been alleged to be on that card that's going to be happening on the 8th of March. Now, the rumor was that they could potentially be facing each other, but I know for a fact that Deontay Wilder don't want that work. If Wilder took that fight, win, lose or draw, I'll respect him, because that is then the most dangerous opponent he's ever fought. If everyone was talking about Luis Ortiz, no, well, Jean Gelé is legit in every facet. The punch power, the size, the boxing skills, everything, the movement, the way he basically can get into range, like that will be a mammoth test for Deontay Wilder. So if he did take it, congrats to him. One person I know for a fact was offered the Zhang fight and has turned it down thus far is Joseph Parker. I'm not going to say how I know, and I don't know the reasons why he's turned it down. It might be the turnaround time, maybe it's too quick for him, I'm not sure, but I know that he's rejected that fight. So I think at this point in time, they're just looking at different opponents for Jean. Quite frankly, I would actually like to see Jean Gelé against Martin Bakoli. That to me would be because both, Bakoli is ranked number 1 in the WBA. Zhang is ranked number 1 in the WBO, and obviously is the interim champion at this point. Consolidate those spots there. To me, that would be perfect. But I still think Michael Hunter is trying to campaign for that rematch with Martin Bakoli. I don't know what's necessarily happening there, but that would be interesting. So let me know kind of who you guys would want to see in that particular. If they don't fight each other, who would you like them to fight? I mean, quite frankly, maybe even Michael Hunter against Deontay Wilder. That would be a good fight to come back to, and that's a fight again. I'd be very confident that Michael Hunter would win that. Even sort of at this sort of advanced stage with the lack of full-time activity that he's had recently. But yeah, let me know. Also, let me know who else you would like to see on the card, and just what else you think will take place in that sort of time frame. But yeah, look, ultimately, I'm going to kind of leave it there. Those are the major talking points. Thanks very much for watching. As I said before, happy new year, first video of 2024. Definitely won't be the last. I'm at what my aim was to reach 1,300 subscribers by 2024. Obviously, I did it 6 days out, or 6 days in, I should say. But I'm there now. So I guess the aim for the rest of the year is to try and get to 2,000. Maybe if I get to 2,000 at a decent time, we'll look maybe a bit more, 2,200, 2,500. We'll see how we get. But I appreciate everyone that does tune in, everyone that does watch. Thank you very much for tuning in. Keep subscribing. Keep becoming members and then I'll sort of start up the members only content again. And then new videos will be coming from next week. So thank you very much for watching. And for right now, I will leave it there, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.